Hey everyone, and welcome back with one of my favorite people in the world, Debi Sementelli. How are you, Debi?
I'm fantastic, and thankfully, I don't have any electricity problems because we had a little problem here in Texas, but we're all good right now. So I'm very
glad
happy.
to hear that.
Right.
Debi, what is this session going to be all about?
Okay. Well, first of all, I've got in the free downloads. If you haven't downloaded it yet, you want to download the free composition template. And this is a Procreate file. It's low res, so it should be okay for everybody. And if it's not for some reason, follow along, and we'll and you can send me a note, and I'll try to make it even lower resolution later. But I've got it all layered out, and step by step, I'm going to be talking about the importance of strong composition. And I'm kind of doing rather than talking a lot, I'm going to show you the importance of good composition with my presentation. So should we get into it now?
Incredible, yeah.
Okay, so the very first thing that I want to do is start with the end in mind. That is the basic concept of composition, of having a strong composition. Of you want to have an image of something that you want to create. If there's nothing in your head, you're going to struggle more. Now, this happens to be a lovely font by my friend Laura Worthington, and it's beautiful, but you can see there's no composition. There's no highlighted words. We don't really get a feeling from this saying. So how do we do that? Well, what I did, and I'm going to, whoops, hold on. I got to turn off some layers there. Okay.
I love that. This is like a presentation in Procreate.
Yeah, it is.
Is that right?
Exactly.
It's the first. I've never seen that.
Yeah,
Pushing
I was
the limits of Procreate.
Let's do this. All right. So, so what I did, this whole thing that I'm going to show you in the next few minutes, I did in 10 minutes. So the idea is you think, oh, I just want to get started on the piece. You will struggle more and waste more time throughout your process if you don't take 10 minutes to say, will this work? And how can it work? So 10 minutes is all you need. This happens to be a grid from the Slayout Lettering Masterclass. And it actually comes with 3 grids that are ready to go from 4 to 6 words, 6 to 8 words, and 7 to 10 words. So if you are a newbie and you're like, I don't even know how to set things up, I don't know what shapes, this comes with this kit. And I think it's genius because you can just use one of these just to get started. So that's what I've done. I've just used the very first one, and you can see it has a center line, so that's going to help me determine balance. But this is your structure. It's like building a house. So you have to have a foundation for your house not to fall apart later. So onto that structure, the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to determine hierarchy. So you can see I've already chosen start and end as the primary words, and then the smaller words can just be smaller. They're not as important. People just need to see the highlighted words. And I've already played around with a flourish on some of the letters. So I'm giving myself something to work with. I'm starting to add, like, let's say we're framing the house. And then next, we're going to make sure that there's balance. So you can see that I have outlined around the words and found the negative space, and I'm looking to see if there's a balance of positive and negative space. Now, these shapes are also going to help me determine where I might want fillers. And as Jimbo already pointed out, there's like so many different fillers that you can put in. So he has, in his Slayout Lettering Masterclass, the idea of using 3D letters, or I like to call it dimension, ornaments, or flourishes. And that is basically your answer to how to cover blank spaces. Because that's another thing. People sometimes put their lettering in, and then they're like, now where do I put, what do I put, where do I put it? So this is your answer. Easy peasy.
So smart.
Yeah, it is. And believe me, if you are new to doing composition, this is going to save you so much time, because it really starts to train your brain and your eye on what looks good, on a process to follow, and it will ultimately save you time if you take the time to do this in the beginning. So let's look at, after we have established our balance, we're going to now put in some ornaments. And there we go. So I've got 3 of the same shape, and there's 3 because you always want to use odd numbers. That is just a design concept that's in everything. So I took the same one because we want to have the eye feel rested. When your eye sees too many different things, it can be jarring. And you want to have a place for your eye to rest. You want to have it easily move around the canvas. So if we have one on the lower left, and then we come up to the middle, and then we come around to the right. So our eye is nicely following along. And then we're going to go and put swashes in. So again, we're just following, if you look at the spaces, the balance shapes that I put in, we're just filling in those shapes. And really, it makes it so much easier. This is a process that is almost fail-proof. And the last thing that we want to do is take away those structures and the balance part, and you can already see how it doesn't fall apart, just like a well-built house. So if anybody has any questions about that process, you can watch the replay, but I'm also happy to answer questions as I go along. I'm going quick because I want to get to the part where people get to work in the Procreate app, in the template themselves, and follow along with me. And again, like, this is so fundamental, but this is the point I wanted to prove. I did this sketch in 10 minutes, and I already know, okay, I can work with this. This is going to look good, and I can do some other things. Oh, I think I forgot one more thing. Hold on. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I forgot the dimension.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. Whoops, sorry.
I love how you break it down, Debbie. Very, very clear so far.
So again, we've got dimension, we've got swashes, we've got ornaments. Those 3 things that Jimbo suggests are what you're going to do to fill out your composition. And then we've come in with the hierarchy in the beginning. We made sure it was balanced. We had the structure grid behind it. So 10 minutes, and you can see if a piece is going to work or not. And it saves you hours later worrying or stressing or feeling confused or feeling frustrated that something's not working and you're not sure what. So I'm going to move on. And so this is just to show, again, this is in this layout masterclass. This is where he took all of those things, the flourishes, the ornaments, and the swashes, the dimension, and put it all together in one piece.
Really cool.
Yeah. Okay, now I'm going to do a little bit of a shout out, because we've had some wonderful, lovely people using our kit. And I want to show how these compositions are really strong. So we have Jackie, love Jackie.
I didn't even have to read Jackie's name there to know that was hers.
Yeah, right. And then we have Dorinda. And so Jackie's using florals, and Dorinda's using some of the partial frames and florals. And you can see the compositions are really strong. The colors are really strong. And then we go to the opposite, which is a very light color background, but we have Chamonix and Shrubs, and they are taking the same wording, good things are coming, and totally different compositions. Chamonix is using some of our botanicals to create a frame that surround the wording. And
it looks like a sticker.
I
can
know,
imagine
because
buying that as a sticker.
yeah, and she used a technique that is like for cutout paper, and that's something anybody could Google. Like, you know, there's tutorials on that. But yeah, it's a great piece. And then we have Shrubs, and she used the actual, well, we're using one with the circle, but the frame that we're going to be using today is this frame, except with a circle inside. So the purpose of these frames, and I made a ton of frames because they're specifically for beginners who are like, I can't draw, I don't know what to do. You just stamp a frame and you already have a structure. And now you just, all you have to worry about is how to put your wording inside the frame and coloring it.
Love that. How does it feel to you seeing work out there in the wild that's using your brushes?
Oh, it's the best feeling in the world. Like, it's like, they're like, they're my children, you know. It's like seeing your kid in the kindergarten play. You're like, that's mine. The other side to that is it feels like a collaboration to me, because I love to create all of these pieces. I love to draw and illustrate, but I don't necessarily want to spend my time making all of these pieces. I'd rather give the things to people to make. And then I'm always amazed. I'm like, oh my gosh, I would have never thought to use it like that. So it's so much fun. It's rather addictive. So Shrubs takes the now is the new later, and that is the same wording we're using for our composition template today, and does a totally different thing than Martine does. Martine emphasizes now and later. She gives those a lot of dimension. She uses one of my, this is a flower frame. So you just stamp it and color it. It's as easy as that. And Shrubs takes the banner, which already has dimension built in, and just letters on the banner. And both of them work. And so it's totally up to you what you want to do with it. But I think those are fantastic examples. This is really cool how you can use black as a background, and you can just do black and white as Janet did, which is so strong. Or like Chamonix, you can take the black with the white lettering and then add the color for the punch up. So I think these are both strong pieces, and I love having a dark background. That's like so much fun to have a dark background, because it really pops whether you're doing black and white or color.
Beautiful.
Now, I'm going to tell you about a little experiment that I've been doing. So this is my composition template that I sent out to my testers. Thank you to all my testers. And they sent me back what they did based on my tutorial composition template that I sent them. And this was a Procreate tutorial, just like what everybody's getting today. And it's amazing how many different things they came up with. So we have Nita, and Nita, I have to tell you, was like petrified to try using so many stamps, but she made it work. And
very cool.
And then Karen, who has this dynamic, she is very colorful in all of her work, and she brought that in here and used like a partial frame and some botanicals. So same tutorial, totally different looks. And my goal in this is to really create tutorials that are different, that bring out people's uniqueness. Because there's enough people doing tutorials where you make the exact same thing that they're making. And those are fantastic. Like, that's a wonderful way to learn. But I want to take it in a different direction. And this is what I'm excited about. All of these people who are willing to test it, used it, sent these back, and none of them are like the original that I sent out to them. So Elena used fonts, which is perfectly fine if you are not comfortable with lettering and you just want to get used to learning about composition and playing around on Procreate. Use fonts. It's the same concept, and you can do a lot of wonderful things. You can warp them, as she did in the word permission. You can create shadows. So play around with fonts if you want to just get used to creating good compositions. And then Lynn did this lovely piece, beautiful colors, like it's a really unique color combination and really interesting choices in her wording. And in, I mean, yeah, not just the wording, but the style of her words. And it all works together because of the composition. If you took away the composition and you just used those 3 different styles of lettering, it would not work as well. Mm-hmm. And so one of the important things to note is you don't have to be a master lettering artist. When you have good composition, it makes up for any flaws in your lettering. Trust me.
Great tip.
And I'll tell you one of the things that I love about these people. They're very sweet people, but they're also very adventurous. They're willing to try new things. They're willing to experiment. Like, you know, I sent them this template and it's kind of a complicated, you know, piece, but I wanted to see like how complicated should it be? How simple should it be? And they came back and surprised me, and they gave me great feedback, which was wonderful. I appreciate that so much. But that is one of the things that I like to do. I like to follow people, not necessarily that are totally professional and all polished. I like to see the people who are learning things and trying new things. And all of these people are doing that. Not that they don't already do beautiful work. So at this point, it would be good for you to go ahead and open up the template in your on your iPad, so you can follow along if you want to. Otherwise, you can just watch. So just like we said in the beginning, start with the end in mind. The most important thing is to make a plan. And so thumbnail sketches are perfect for this. Now, because we already have a stamp, you don't have to design anything. Like, the only thing you have to decide on is how are you going to compose the lettering inside of the circle. And that's it. And you can do many sketches. I just did 4 here just to get us started. And then what I want to show you, if you click on the step, you'll see that there is a little space that says your thumbnails. So you can just unclick my thumbnail ideas and you can literally write down on that layer and do your sketches. So one of the things that I've given you is the color palette on a layer. So you can see in the lower left-hand corner, and you just want to click on that and keep it on the whole time. And if you don't know, you can easily just press on one of the colors and it will automatically change the color. So if you see that color dot changing, that's what's happening. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on to step 2. And what we're going to be doing in step 2 is we're going to be now choosing our color for the floral part of the frame. And I say this because the frames, when you look at this frame, it's mix frame 29. So you can go ahead and go in your freebie kit and select that. And I'm going to choose the lightest color because our flower is much harder to recolor, and we're going to color everything separately. So you want to have the hardest part that would be too much to recolor, just because it has lots of pieces. You want to choose your color for that piece first. So I'm going to go ahead, and you'll see in the steps there is a place to add your mix frame. So I'm going to turn that on. I'm going to turn off the directions, and you go to your brush settings and choose 49%, and that is the exact percentage that you need. And now we're just going to just make sure that it's centered. And that's just an eyeball calculation. So now that we have our main mixed frame done, we're going to choose what shadow color we're going to use. So I'm going to go and change it to black. And all we have to do is duplicate that frame. And you can see I said shadow frame there just to give you a reference of where it goes, but we have already got it in here. And now, if you don't know how to do this, this is a cool way to recolor something. So you click on Alpha Lock and then click again to fill layer, and you can see it fills it with that color. And now we're going to go to Adjustments and go down to Motion Blur, click on Layer. And now we're just going to, you can move your finger, you can use your pen, whatever you want to do. And you can move it as much as you think you want to. So I've got it about 23%. We'll see how that goes. And then we click on the arrow and let's move that over. Now it's very subtle because it's black on a dark blue, but it all adds to the dimension. Okay, now we're going to go back to the mixed frame layer, and now we're going to color this all in. And to save time, I'm only going to color like half of the stuff because I want to make sure that we get through the whole tutorial. But so you can color half, and then you can go back later and color more later. Mm-hmm. So what I chose for the inner circle is this brightest pink color. So we simply drag that in. And then for the next circle, I chose the red color. And you can see that these are all different color values. And color value means the lightness or darkness of a color. And that is what, that is what helps us to create dimension. If your colors are all the same value, you're not going to have the same, the same look. So I'm going to that inner circle now. There we go. Or the outer circle, sorry. And now we're going to color the branches and tree stem. And I'm going with the lightest green because we're actually going to be layering textures over it and shading. And so we just, and don't do that. Sometimes you got to get right in there. Don't forget that little leaf.
This is already starting to jump off the screen.
Exactly.
Yep.
Whoop.
You're a magician, Debbie.
Okay, so I'm just doing half of it. All right.
By the way, don't think I missed the fact that you've deliberately put little gaps between the flowers and the leaves so that you can easily fill each one with a different color.
Thank you, Tom.
Super smart.
Thank you. I was going to mention that, and I'm glad that you did. All right, so now we've got everything colored because we're leaving the flowers, the off-white color. So now we're going to go to our next step. So I'm going to turn off, I've turned off the directions, no worries. Okay. All right, so we're going to step 3. And this is where we're going to add the reverse botanical. If you see where it says Botanical 105, that is the botanical that is included in your kit. And so we're going to go to the lighter pink, and we're going to grab that botanical. And this is where I created dual sets. One is negative, one is positive. You'll see in the whole botanical set where it says solid and outline sets. So each of these sets has a solid and an outline, and this gives you easy dimension. So if I go to my Botanical 105, whoops, sorry, turn off that. Okay. All right. So now you can see I've got my outlined botanical over my solid botanical, and we're going to line it up by turning it just to the right. And here's a cool thing. So I can create an off-screen effect by making it just slightly larger. So I've got some of the background in there. So it's kind of like an offset silk screen effect. And that's kind of a cool thing because it adds more dimension. So you can see, compared to the other flowers, we've already created some great dimension just by adding a stamp.
Stunning. Yeah, the way it's that kind of exterior stroke, but you've got those little gaps in there as well.
Exactly, exactly. So we would normally just duplicate this and line it up with all the other flowers, and you're going to be very happy to know that you don't have to turn this flower again. Everything is the same way because I knew that would be a headache. So easy peasy. Okay, so we're going to move on to step 3.5. And this is 3.5 because, whoops, where am I? Okay, I have to add, oh, there we go. Okay, so in step 3.5, we want to go back to step 2, and you'll see that it says black circle 31%. So if you change your color to black, whoop, and then you go and go to your freebie pack and get your mixed frame 16. Oh, I also want to point out, do you see my little icons before the freebie pack? Okay.
Such a great term.
Yeah, so people mention, like, how do you find things? Well, that's what I do. And a lot of times I just, I'll keep them on things that I use a lot. But sometimes, like in this situation, I take some of them off, so I know those are the only 4 that I want. Okay, so we have our mixed frame 16. We've got the color black, and we're going to make sure that our brush is at 31%. And that, okay, I'm going to just turn this on. And we stamp it. And now what you're going to do, we're going to hit the arrow key, and we're going to move this so that it is in between the large pink circle and the second circle, so that what it's going to give us is an illusion that there is a hole there. And now we have a highlight on our second circle, so it makes it look dimensional.
Very cool.
And later we're going to come back and add another little circle to our word, but we're not going to do that right now, even though the directions say that. So I'll have to fix that later. All right. So let's move on to step 4.
Yeah, it's really starting to pop.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You can do so much with stamps that that you can just create so much more depth and so much more interest when you have stamps, and it takes you less time because you don't have to draw all this out. I spent 6 months drawing everything out for you. Okay, so now we're going to add our lettering. Now, what I've done is I've actually given you some guidelines from, whoops, move the wrong thing. Okay, let's go to the guidelines. There we go. And you'll see you have guidelines. And so I've given you these guidelines. This is from Jimbo's kit. And I love these guidelines. They just are nice and clean. So after you've done your rough, when you want to make sure that it's actually more accurate, you can use these guidelines, and they have like the little centering marker, so you can line them all up. So that's one of the little freebies for you in there. And normally you have a layer for your sketch lettering, your second shadow, first shadow, shadow, final lettering, and inlays. That's, again, for later when you're using this. But right now, you should have Debi's lettering. And I'm going to turn off the, oh, actually, I'm going to use that because I'm going to line this up. So I've given you my lettering because I know for us to get through this, it would take way too long for you guys to come up with your own lettering. But again, what I'm hoping is that this tutorial, this template, is a tool for you to use later. And you can switch out frames, you can switch out stamps, but if you kind of use it as a guide to help you in your future compositions, that's my goal. So I'm going to turn off the guidelines. All right, so now we've got our lettering. And now we're going to move on to adding shadows to the lettering. Now, I believe that I also gave you Debi's shadows, but I'm going to actually show you how I made that by creating a third shadow. So I'm going to move, make sure I'm on the right layer. I'm going to move those shadows down. And it's cool to have a third shadow that can actually be with less opacity, less opaque. There we go. So what we want to do, and I kind of created it here, but I'm just going to create another one. So I'm going to duplicate my original. I'm going to change the color. So I want it to be the dark blue. So I've changed my color to dark blue. I'm going to come in here and alpha lock, fill the layer. And now you have to undo alpha lock before you can do anything else. So now while I'm still on that layer, I'm going to go over to adjustments and hit motion blur, click on layer. And again, you can move your finger. Why is it? There we go. Okay, you can move your finger, you can move your pencil, however far you want it. And this is all up to your discretion. Like, I didn't put it very far, but I'm going to make it a little bit further this time because I think I didn't do it enough. So I'm going to put it, that's like 11.5. All right, we'll try that. So we have that layer on a separate one. And now we can duplicate that. And Jimbo actually taught me this. And he was like, duplicated 1,000 times. And like, I don't really? I took it literally. Okay, so we've got 5 times. And then you can pinch these together. I'm not always successful with the pinch thing, as you can see there. Stop that. So you can also just
ultimate trio, Debi. You, Jimbo, and Taya. You're my favorite trio.
Oh, I love them. I'm merging these down because for some reason I'm not able to pinch them. All right, so we've got them merged down. Now we're going to hit the arrow. We're going to move this over. Oh, I need to move it below the green one. Okay. We're going to move it over further. And I'm even moving it so there's a gap between, if you look at the L, you can see there's a gap between there because it's almost like the lettering is not sitting on the surface. And I'm going to click on the N and I'm going to lower the opacity. And that's about 51%. So that's a totally different shadow than the other shadow.
It looks amazing, though, the depth on that.
Yeah, it really adds a lot. Okay, so now the last thing we're going to do is add inlays, shading, and texture. And you'll see I've got the inlays already laid out here, but you can just go and grab your curved inlay from your freebie set. And I used the pink color. And I'll just add another one for you to see. And just line that up. And when you add the second inlay, you can turn it, because this way it looks more like a flower.
Really cool. Inlays are underused, I think.
Oh, I love inlays. And I like to mix them up. Like, I don't like to use the same exact one. So I created inlays that are similar. Like if you go to my inlay set, you'll see that this long inlay 11 has the same shape as the 10. Oh, sorry, that's a little messed up thing there. That's supposed to be just 10. And then similarly, there's the single one. Oh, sorry. Where is it? Okay. This long inlay 14 and 13 also works together. And then this long inlay 12 also has that same shape at the top and bottom. So I like to mix them up so they have something in common, but they're not totally the same.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I like to do is just add a little color. So I brought the blue in there. And that's where you can, in the small places, I think it's good for you to kind of mix colors up. But you don't necessarily want to do that in large areas, because your eye is going to be fighting, and you want to give your eye places to rest. Okay, the next thing is the lettering shading. And let me see if we go back to step 4. I'm going to click on to show you shading that sorry. There we go. That I already did for the N. Okay, I'm going to blow this up so we can see better. So with shading, we're going to change the color to the green. Oh, let me go back and get the darkest green. And we're going to go and go to the freebie kit again and get our splatter brush. And by the way, you can use the splatter brush for all of your shading and texturizing in this composition template. If you have others to use, that's great, but you can use one brush and it looks great. So I'm going to demonstrate basically the concept of shading. So where there is the smaller joints, you want to put the darkest shading. And because things bend, even a straight piece like on the N, when you come to the middle of an object, it gets a little bit lighter than it is on the ends. And so we want to keep that slightly lighter in the center. And this is a good place to use your smudge tool. And when you come to a place where there is an edge like this H, you want to define that edge. So I don't want this to all be dark. I want to keep that somewhat lighter. So if I come up here and make that darker, and then slowly bring it a little bit lighter. So that's the idea of shading. And if you want to do some highlights, even on the shadows, you can go back to your lighter green, and you can put a layer and change it to overlay. Go back to our brush, our splatter brush, and you can see how that brightens up just a little bit. Now, I wouldn't do that everywhere, but in the brighter spots, it kind of adds a little.
Hanging out with the Shout Bam crew. Because I'm loving the 3D nature of the lettering. It's so cool to see collaborations, because I know how much you guys and how much they've developed on the illustration side, and I can tell you've been trying some new styles of lettering since you got to know them.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, they are the best. Okay, so I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to take the eraser, and you can use the Debi brush to erase. And a little trick that you can try is you don't make it very wide, but you can, on the edge, make sure I'm on the right layer. Yes, I am. Oh, wrong layer. Okay, go back to the shading layer. On the edge, you can eliminate a little bit, because edges catch light. So we're just, it's just a really subtle thing, but
it's like a bevel almost.
Exactly, exactly. Edges catch light, so it just makes it look not as flat. Adds, again, more dimension. So that's the concept of shading. And then if we look at our background.
You're rotating this. I feel like I'm watching a music video or something. It's like 60s psychedelic type. It's really cool.
Now, if we look at the background behind the lettering, we want to do a couple of things. Number one is we want to fill in that circle that says is, and I'm going to choose the red, and I'm going back to, all the way back to the mixed frame layer, and I'm going to color, not that. Oh, sorry. That's not where it is. My apologies. I'm going to go to the lettering. I forgot I left it in the lettering. Okay, and I'm going to color it in the lettering. There we go. And now I can take that black circle that I made before, and I can duplicate it and make it smaller. Here we go. Okay. And place it just behind the circle that is the IS. Nice. And then I can actually come in and color that in too.
Do you think adding different 3D effects from different perspectives might be too much on one lettering piece? That's an interesting one, because from here we've got just one perspective. So even though it's a lot, like there's a lot of depth and a lot of layers, there's a kind of singular angle going on with it all. So what do you think? Personally, I'm not the expert here, but personally I find it a little bit jarring when you kind of get multiple 3D angles in one piece. But what are your thoughts, Debbie?
Yeah, I think it has to be limited. You know, again, what is your goal with the composition? And if it's lettering, the number one goal is to be readable. And the second thing with your composition is you don't want so much going on everywhere that it's like your eye is just fighting, you know, and going back and forth and back and forth. Your eye has to rest, and it has to have places to rest. And also, sometimes you can do small things that might have more different, you know, dimension, but not totally large things. I mean, again, if you had two words and, you know, and the perspective was different on just two large words, that can work. But if you've got too much going on, that's just not soothing to the eye. So I think you have to train your eye and see what, you know, what feels comfortable.
That makes complete sense.
And I kind of do that, like when and now I'm filling in the background with some texture, and I've used the darker color so you can see it's already toned down that pink. And I want to point something out. Red and green are complementary colors, and if you have them at the same color value, they will fight. Your eye will fight, and you don't want that. So so by toning it down with some texture, and now I'm kind of going around and just making more of an edge by, and I'm going to turn this, I don't want anybody to get dizzy, but by making more of an edge, again, it just kind of adds to some of the dimension by just going around and putting this darker area by the edge. And now we've created a highlight on the final edge. So again, that gives it more dimension as well. I can also go in and add a little bit of splash kind of to the outer circles. Just kind of like hit it with that. I could also come in with the lighter pink and, well, let's go down brush size and add a little bit of like a lightning effect just in some areas where I think the light might hit. See, that's very subtle.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want too much. Got a lot of nice shadows over here.
Yeah, it's just packed full of depth, this piece.
Oh, I want to point out one last thing. On the botanicals, you can go back to the botanicals and add more color. Whoops, wrong thing. So I can go in with like, I think, no, I'll go in with the medium. So on this botanical, I can find it, right, make sure I'm, oh, I had them all done in advance. Okay, sorry. Where's that one? Okay. I just have to move that. So you can come in above that, get the splatter brush. Actually, I'm going to go with the darker. And always, okay. Well, I
feel like don't worry. I feel like we've had so many different and varied techniques in this piece, Debbie. This is like the perfect composition for teaching because we've covered so much.
Good. Well, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to keep the labor as far as designing it very minimum so that people could actually spend time learning some of these really simple but fun techniques to add more dimension and make your composition stronger. So you can do that kind of thing. You know, you can play around more with the different colors. Go back here and see which ones you like the best. And that's generally, you can see I added some splatter to the background, just made the brush really large. But, and then you can, of course, go in later and add some more, like I take the blue over the frame, go back to the shading and texture above the frame, and you can add, darken this up. You can do the same thing that we did with the lettering, going in and putting an overlay to create some highlights, even on areas that, you know, would stand out more. So same basic idea of shading, and I'm just doing this very roughly. But you can add highlights and, yeah, kind of do all that. And so in the end,
Debi, you're a genius. I've loved this session.
Thank you.
So good.
So I like to tell people I am a beginner Procreate user because I was a font designer for 10 years. I've now kind of switched to Procreate, although I may do more fonts in the future. But right now I'm just loving creating all these stamps, especially. I love doing the drawings for these. And so I had to learn, and I'm still learning all of these things. I know this information when I'm working on paper, but bringing it into Procreate and learning all the particular tools that you would use to get the effects that you might make on paper is a totally different thing. So yeah, I am a newbie. I totally consider myself a newbie. And
well, I consider you one of the best teachers in this space. So I definitely don't consider you to be a newbie in that sense. But what I would say is let's give it up for Debi in the chat. Let's go follow and support. And that was one of the best broken down demonstrations I've seen. Honestly, you're always so clear. You're such a natural teacher. And from start to finish, I felt like you held my hand and you taught me through it nice and easy, which is how I love to learn. Debi, again, thank you. You're such a star. What a great session. And I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks.
Debi, I'll catch up with you really soon, no doubt. But yeah, thank you. That was great.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Appreciate it.
Take care, everyone.